So as I said before, this is a 2-day PD, and we have a slide that sort of announces the beginning of day one. You know, at some point, I think we've imagined that it starts at 8:30. You'll have to adjust that depending on your client's needs. But what we'll start out with is a warm-up. So you've already discussed who you are. You've introduced the LP if you need to. And now we're going to take the participants into an interactive way to warm up, as well as start getting oriented to some of the basic concepts of the day. So next slide, you announce to the participants that you're about to give them a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper is either going to be what is called a learning target or an assignment. And their job over the next 5 minutes is to find a mate. If you're a learning target, which means that you have the words I can that introduce the phrase on your piece of paper, you are looking for someone who is an assignment, which starts with a verb. You'll tell them this, and then there's a slide here that gives them a few rules / directions. Move about the room, talk to people, introduce yourself, find that mate. If you found a mate and you're killing time, you can just tell them to tell surprising I can statements to each other. But one thing that's important to note is that there's no one right answer. There's more than one ways to combine. And also important to note, you can change your mind. So if someone comes along that you feel like you're a better match for, that's okay and actually probably to be expected. Set them off to do this activity in the room. Ahead of time, of course, you're going to have to figure out how many participants you have and sort of dole out the right number of paired sheets. Simon, where are those sheets? Can I just show those on the camera for a second? You printed them out, and I just want to show those. That's it. You got it. Hand those to me right now.
Well, these are the session learning topics. I know you'll
Oh, well, it's all right because they still do the same thing. They're pieces of paper that look like this. You hand these out. You'll have to figure out how many to give out. If you have an even number, that's great. You're good. If you have an odd number, you might have to play and be one of the people that's roaming the room. If you have time and want to have a debrief around what occurred, if it's a small group, for example, everyone's in a standing up and in a huddle, you can ask people to discuss this question. What does it mean for an assessment to align with a learning target? How were people making the choices that they made? You can also have pairs share out their journey. Like, first I started with this person, and then I ended up with this person. Different ways that you can handle this. Ideally, you're having this happen within about 10 minutes. When you finish the warm-up, have everyone sit back down and move into the logistics of the day. The first thing before you even get into our central question and our learning target, et cetera, is to direct them to a really important resource that they can reference during the day, and that is a website that serves as sort of the participant binder. This is a shorthand URL that makes it very easy for participants to just, if they have computers or tablets in front of them, as increasingly people do in these sessions, they can type that in. You can demonstrate it by just clicking the link itself, and it will take you to a website that takes you to the URL web page on which the resources for this PD are assembled. Let me make this a little bigger for you. One of the nice things about this is that you can just use your browser software to increase the scale, and the web page has been designed to expand and fill the screen so it's more legible to the participants. Don't spend too much time on this. You don't want them squinting at a fine print, but let them know that this is what it looks like. It gives an overview of the day, and most importantly, there are a series of digital files that are numbered that you may be referring to and having them pop up on their computers. Some of these are already handouts that you'll be passing out for certain situations, but as we increasingly know, certain participants prefer accessing things digitally, and we've seen that occurring as we've been giving this PD. Back to the slides. direct their attention to the learner's agenda. You should probably have a hard copy of this that's already been distributed, or you tell them to look it up on the website. And now's the time to walk them through, frame the day. Starting with our essential question. This same sentence is at the top of their agenda, so they can kind of follow along with you while looking at their agenda. This is not on their agenda. There's a couple other things that we add that you'll have to explain, that if you're working with this client or school for a longer period, remind them that that this is part of a much bigger school-wide outcome that's about implementing an entire cohesive deeper learning student assessment system. Remember, this is module 3 out of 5 modules, so this slide reminds them what the bigger picture is. We make a distinction between a long-term learning target and the PD's learning target itself. This one ultimately means that if you take the learning that provided by this session and you play it out over the months to come, ultimately you're going to be able to arrive at the place where you can say that I can implement a high-quality performance assessment. That's not quite what we can lay claim to with just 2 days. So the learning target for just the PD is that I can design a quality performance assessment that ultimately I will implement. So make that distinction between these 2 slides, between the long term and what we can reasonably accomplish in the next 2 days. Because we're modeling project-based learning always in the midst of our PDs, we add a third dimension of a third way to think about framing the day, the 2 days, and that is the product. What product is emerging from this? In this case, you can let participants know that what's going to emerge is a complete draft of a usable performance assessment that they can take to their practice. May need further refinements, further resources that they have to still get because they can't get to them in those 2 days. But let them know that that's the goal, is to have a beginning and a middle and an end of some vision of a performance assessment for their students.